Good evening, I'm Mrs. Bolin and I'm helping you review for your exam 1 in college algebra. We're on problem 12 of the review and the problem reads, Sarah deposited an amount into an account that returns 9% annual simple interest rate. She deposited $2,500 more than she did in the first account into an account that returns 5% annual simple interest rate. The total interest earned on both investments for 1 year was $475. How much money was deposited into each account? Okay, so I always teach everybody to read these problems 3 times. So that was our first time reading through. Here's our second time. And I tell you to read it 3 times through. The first time is just so you get an idea. You know, are we talking spaceships, astronauts? Are we talking about landfills? Are we talking about investments? You know, what in the world are we even talking about? That's the purpose of reading it the first time. The second time through, you should be thinking about how you solve the problem. The third time you read it through, you should be gathering the data and making sure that you have everything provided for in the problem that you need to solve the problem. Okay, so we've read it through the first time, and that tells us that we're talking about investments and we want to know how much Sarah has invested it into the 2 different accounts. So we're reading a second time to see about how we would want to solve it. Sarah deposited an amount of money into an account that returns 9% annual simple interest rate. She deposited $2,500 more than she did in the first account into an account that returns 5% annual simple interest rate. The total interest earned on both investments for 1 year was $475. How much money was deposited into each account? So because I know that it's a simple interest rate, that tells me that I'm going to be taking the interest rate, multiplying it by the amount of money invested, and then that will give me the return on that investment. We'll add that together for both of the 2 different investments, and it should equal our total return of $475. So our third time we're reading through, we're going to be gathering data. So we're going to highlight the information that is important. So Sarah deposited an amount of money into an account that returns 9% annual simple interest rate. Okay, she deposited $2,500 more than she did in the first account into an account that returns a 5% annual simple interest rate. The total interest earned on both investments for 1 year was $475. How much money was deposited into each account? So that was the question. Now we can solve the problem. So we're going to switch ink here, and we're going to say we're going to have 2 variables. We're going to have let X denote the amount of money invested at 9% interest rate. Okay, now we're going to have Y. Y is, not equal, is going to denote the amount of money invested at 5% interest rate. Okay, so we have X that was X amount that was invested at 9%, and we have Y amount that was invested at 5%. We know that it says she deposited $2,500 more into the 5% than she did the first. Okay, so that means Y. Oops. That means Y. Let's see here. Y is going to equal X amount of money plus $2,500. Okay, because Y is the amount invested in at 5%, and it says right here she deposited $2,500 more than she did in the first account into an account that returned 5%. Okay, so I know that's talking about Y. Now I also know that the total interest rate on both investments for 1 year was $475. So that tells me that if I take, remember, when I have a percentage like 9% and I'm going to do math with that number, I have to rewrite that 9%. We're going to take that 9% and we're going to rewrite that as 0.09. Okay, we have to move that decimal place over 2 places. In the 5%, it's the same thing. We have to rewrite that as 0.05. Okay, so we can do math. So I know that we take 0.09% multiplied by how much money we invested at that rate. We're going to add to that 0.05 multiplied by y, the amount invested at 5%, and we know those two sums together must equal $475. Okay, so those are our equations. Now you'll notice right here, we know what y equals. We know that y is equal to x plus 2,500. So we're going to just substitute what we know y to be equal to right here in for y. So we'll rewrite the equation then as being 0.09x plus 0.05 multiplied by x plus 2,500, and that equals $475. Now all we have to do is solve for x because we have one variable, one equation. So we'll distribute our 0.05 along and we end up with 0.09x plus 0.05x plus, let me turn on my calculator real quick, 0.05 times 2,500 is equal to 125, so plus 125 is equal to 475. Now we're going to combine like terms, so 0.09 plus 0.05 is going to give me 0.14x, and we can, we'll go ahead and just add 125, 475. Now we will bring over, if I can move my screen, there we go. So now we'll subtract 125 from both sides. My computer will recognize that I do want that to be an equal sign, minus 125. So I end up with 0.14x is equal to, so 475 minus 125, so that's going to be 350. We're going to divide both sides through by 0.14, 0.14. So then we're going to divide that through by 0.14, and we get x is equal to 2,500. Okay, so that is what x equals. Now we're going to go back up. Don't get confused because we have the same numbers going on here. We have x, oops, my ink did not change colors. Let's try that again. So we have x is equal to 2,500. We have that y is equal to x plus 2,500. So that means that y is going to be equal to 2,500, because that's what x is equal to, plus the 2,500 initial investment that was more. So that is equal to 5,000. Okay, now if I want to check, so we invested 5,000 at 5%, because that's what we defined up here. So we did 5,000 at 5%, and we did 2,500 at 9%. So our check, if we wanted to check to make sure that this worked out correctly, we could come back down here and we could then say that 0.09 multiplied how much money we invested at that rate was 2,500. We're going to add to that 0.05 multiplied by the amount invested at 5%, and does that equal $475? That is the question. So we go 0.09 times 2,500. Oops, I missed a decimal there. Times 2,500. And so that's $225 right here on that investment. Now we're going to go 0.05 times 5,000. And that is 250. 250. And again, does that equal 475? Well, sure it does. Okay, so 475 equals 475. So we check out just fine. So that is our answer. We have $2,500 invested at 9% and $5,000 invested at 5%. Make sure you study this problem for the exam. And if you have any questions, send me an email. Thanks.